class, it's Miss Miller here, and today I'd like to talk to you about a literary genre entitled character, and we're going to be addressing the different levels of characterization. If we take a look at The Old Man and the Sea by Ernest Hemingway, we are introduced to two characters in particular. One is the old man, and the other is the boy. Characters possess moral, intellectual, and emotional qualities, and depending on what they say or dialogue and what they do is the extent of which an author has developed these characters. When we look at a character's temperament or their desires or their moral natures for their speech and their actions, this really drives a character. This is called motivation. What is the character motivated by? If we look at the boy, we see that he aims to please Santiago. He has a moral nature, perhaps, that he's very respectful. And if we look at his temperament, he's rather calm. So this drives the boy. And we begin to understand a little bit more about what he does and why. Now, there's a couple of other features that I'd like to share with you in regards to the levels of characterization. One is called a static character, and so we need to be on the lookout for this. If we take a look at a character, and if they remain the same in terms of their disposition from the beginning of the text to the end, then they're considered a rather stable character and even static. And in many cases, we might even say dull and boring. Now, there's another type of character that is considered dynamic. This character changes throughout the text. They may begin one way, and because of some sort of crisis or event, they may turn into a different person. So these are, when we say temperament and desires and moral nature for speech and action, these could change. Those could be variables if there's something that happens. So a character may be considered or described as dynamic if there is some sort of gradual change that happens in the text. Another item to think about is a rather flat character. A flat character means they're not mentioned very much. The author doesn't do much to develop the character. We don't know what they think, what they say, what they do, how other people feel about them. We don't know very much about them. So that would be considered a flat character. Now, a round character has many, many layers. And if an author takes time to develop this character, we know what they look like, what they say, what they think, how they feel, how other people feel about them, what they feel about different characters, their relationships. We know everything about them. So a character can be both round and dynamic. If an author decides that they want to develop a character, they may be flat, and they may also be static. So this could explain a lot about why characters are the way they are. Another way in which an author can develop a character is really giving us insight into what the person thinks. And to me, when you get into what a character is thinking, you really are revealing their innermost thoughts. And this is actually defined in literary terms as the stream of consciousness, or you can also describe it as an interior monologue. And this is just a continuous flow of thoughts of the character and what he possesses. So it's no longer just what he says and what he does, but you get access to what he's thinking. Now, oftentimes, a stream of consciousness can be in the form of a written in italics. And so you may see the text in one font and then it switches to italics in the font, and that just means that's that character's stream of consciousness. But when I'm looking at The Old Man and the Sea, it looks like sometimes his stream of consciousness is in quotes. So we're not really even sure if he's saying it or if he's thinking it. Now, the stream of consciousness or an interior monologue, remember the other characters don't know that he's thinking these things. So it's adding another layer to this character. This can be, there have been texts where a stream of consciousness is over an entire chapter, or it might just be over a few pages, or it could be a paragraph, or as short or brief as a couple of lines. But regardless of what that is, the stream of consciousness is another layer into developing a character. Imagine if we had access to what you were thinking. Now, remember, when you come in every day, you have you have the things that you say, we get to see what you do, and then we don't get to see what you're thinking. So we have limited access to you as an individual. But imagine the story, it being flipped in a story, and now we have access to what you're thinking, what you do, what you say. We have a bigger picture about who you are. And so the great thing about literature is we get to do that. We get to know these characters better. Now, a great example of this idea of stream of consciousness by Hemingway, he exhibits this in the character of Santiago. And so as we talk in the next few days about the levels of characterization, I want us to take a look at some of the things, not only that he says and does and what the other boy thinks of him, what the boy thinks of him, but what he thinks. And this is going to give us a greater picture of who he is. Now, keep in mind, this idea of the stream of consciousness was really a quality that was developed during a literary movement known as Modernism. And so if you recall from your mind maps where you guys looked at the author study, we know that Ernest Hemingway was heavily criticized, and one of the reasons for being criticized in his works is because he departed from this idea of realism, where authors would write about what was happening. So in this case, the stream of consciousness is not just a level of characterization, but it also shows the change or the changes in the writing. It makes a shift during this period from the realist, it goes to naturalism, but also to modernism. Now, at the end of the day, this really all breaks down to 4 levels of characterization. We haven't mentioned one of them, which is physical. This is the most surface level. This is very basic. The physical level of characterization, we get to know what this character looks like, how they dress, what qualities they have when you can see with the eye. And then we have their social. So the social is, how they interact, their relationships in the text, their families, their roles in their families. That's just another layer. And then we have the psychological. And this is important because it really tells us what it is that they want. What is their driving force? This is where the motivation comes in. And then the 4th level of characterization is classified as the moral, which is what is this character willing to do to get what they want. So we have to think about Santiago, and we have to think about the boy, and take them through each of these. So that is what it means to look at a character in depth. I hope that was helpful.